What up, what up, what up? Welcome to this week's episode of New Orleans Basketball. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphel. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Good to see your face again. Just touch back down from out there, man. Appreciate all the hospitality that was out there in Dallas. As always, love. Shout out to Julia for the graduation and the birthday, man. It was a lot of love out there, man. It was good to see him take that next step, man, and jump another grade, jump another year. And last but not least, shout out to all the moms around the world, man. Happy Mother's Day to all of y'all. Shout out to my mom, man, up in heaven. I miss you. Happy Mother's Day to you, and all that. But man, the playoffs are rolling. Basketball is still in full effect. Got some. Look like a rerun of the bubble is about to happen, about to go down. And so we're going to see if there's any changes, anything. Jason Tatum took the MVP out. It's been good, man. It's been some really elite high-level basketball being played. And I'm soaking it all in until the finals go off, and then we are back to square one. So everything's good on this end, bro. How about you? How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. It was great having the family here. We had our first crawfish ball in Dallas. It was all right. It was all right.
Mm-hmm.
We got areas to improve in, just like the Pelicans and things like that. But yeah, man, some good basketball being played. It's got 2 50-point game sevens so far in 1 year. That's wild. That's crazy to think about that we've been able to witness that in one season. And got some football. Shout out to Jackson Hayes' pops with the Arlington Renegades winning the first XFL championship under the rock. So again, man, you got to enjoy these times because in about 4.5 weeks, it's going to be desperate times. We're going to be looking at Summer League talking about, so who is this one player that was on the third string for? Yeah, man. So you got to enjoy it while you can, man. Before we get too far into the show, make sure you guys help us out. Hit the like button below. Subscribe to New Orleans Basketball. Subscribe to New Orleans.net, subscribe to New Orleans anything that comes across you. Follow us on IG at New Orleans or at NO Basketball, no E. Follow us on Twitter, NO Basketball, no E. Follow us on anything that you follow, NO Basketball with no E. Again, we're trying to grow the brand, trying to grow the network. That's what we're in it for. So before we get into anything too Pels related, Ja Morant.
My goodness.
Did some,
He did the thing. He did
some not so smart things. Again, getting caught and things like that. And I don't want to dive too into it. I don't know the details. I'm not going to talk about something I don't know. And the Grizzlies don't know. The NBA doesn't know. So all you know is that he's been suspended indefinitely from the Grizzlies facilities, and the NBA will rule on it at some point and things like that. But the reason why I bring it up is because the Grizzlies are in the Pelicans division. And so my question to you is, who do you think plays more games next season, Ja Morant or Zion Williamson?
Oh, that's a hell of a question. For the Pelicans' sake, it better be Zion. I would say Zion, because man, I think we're looking at a fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you type of situation with the NBA. And again, like you said, we're not gonna get too much into it, but I know that the NBA is doing an investigation, and I think once you start to like play in the NBA face a little bit, I think with Ja, with that, him seeing so contrite and was so willing to change his behavior, so thinking so hard on what he did, and admitting that it was a distraction, and then to turn around and not even one season later, not even a month later, not even
I'm about to say season,
right back to it and doing the same exact thing. So I think Adam Silver might have had enough, and there needs to be a little bit of discipline involved. So I'm gonna say Zion. But again, I'm the same one who said he was going to play 65 games this season now. So,
right. So, again, all of these things impact, what the Mavericks do this summer, all of those things impact the Pelicans as well, because the Pelicans are fighting to make the playoffs, but also win their division for the first time in a long time as well. So somebody who will be needed in order for the Pelicans to do just that. Herb Jones. So last week, in between episodes, the all defensive team, the all NBA teams, all of those things were announced. Herb Jones did not make the all defensive team. Trey, I'm ready for the riot. Larry Nance, where are we bringing the pitchforks? Things like that. First off, let me get your thoughts on that. Like, again, I'm looking at the list and I'm like, it's not a winning thing because Alex Caruso was first team and the Bulls didn't make the playoffs. It's not a winning thing because OG Anunoby was second team and the Raptors didn't make the playoffs. So from your perspective, like, what are your thoughts on Herb missing the ballot?
I think it's just another situation where the smaller market, the whatever the case is, so for Herb Jones, I think Herb Jones suffers with his, with the things that he does. I think it suffers from two things. Number one, obviously he plays in New Orleans, small market, not a lot of eyes on the team. Listen, you listen to Brian Windhorst talk about he can't even watch Denver play, and Denver is the number one seed in the West and is knocking on the door of the conference final with a 2-time MVP on their team, and he can barely watch. You can barely get those guys on television, so you can imagine trying to watch the Pelicans, in other regions or whatever the case is. And then number two, I think Zion is such a polarizing figure, right? That when things go wrong with Zion, it's like, oh well, the whole Pelicans franchise must be in the trash. Like, oh, Zion's not playing, so just disregard the entire team and the roster. And look, Brandon Ingram fought tooth and nail 2 seasons ago to try to fix that narrative and change that narrative, right? What we all been saying throughout this entire season. But it is what it is. And so listen, Herb is, I think everyone, you hear JJ Redick talk about him, you hear Tim Legler talk about him, you hear the basketball pundits, everybody understands Herb Jones's, skill set and what he brings to the table as far as a defender. I just think that it's one of those situations where, he's a guy that is such a unique talent as far as defensive goes. I always talk about, like, he doesn't do, like, you watch like the playoffs right now and you see all these people doing this like gimmicky defense and trying to be overly physical and daring the refs to call 3 or 4 fouls in a row, thinking about Dylan Brooks and Draymond, who also made the all NBA team, defensive teams. But Herb isn't like that. He's skillful. He'll beat you to a spot. He'll use his hands to take the ball from you and things like that. And I think, his skill set is one of those things that's beyond the all NBA team. And I think that every so often you run into these situations, right? You remember Bradley Beal didn't make an all NBA team. Klay Thompson didn't make an all NBA team. This year, everybody was like, is Jaylen Brown going to make it or is he not? I think every so often you run into these situations where, like, that guy didn't make a team or that guy didn't win an award. Like, I'm thinking about Joel Embiid these other past 2 years, like with the MVP, where it seems as though you're paying your dues in order to get onto the team. So I think that is one of those situations that if he has the same defensive chops next season and does some of the same things that we see this season, that voters, if it's close or if there's things like that, they'll probably start to give him the nod more. Like, okay, this guy hasn't made an all NBA team yet, and everybody knows who he is. But Alex Caruso and OG on the team, listen, those guys are good defenders, but over Herb Jones, that is asinine. That is wild.
And it's not even you can't even look at it like a team statistic because the Pelicans were top 6 in defense. So, like, who do you think was the main responsibility for the Pelicans finishing that high?
Oh, it was defensive anchor Jonas Valanciunas. What do you mean?
So, like, if you look at it that way, it's like there's a lot of reason. I agree with a lot of what you said. Like, people outside of New Orleans, like, if Zion's not playing, they're probably not watching, right? And so you miss a little bit of that. I also think, he missed 16 games. That's not a whole lot of games, but I also think that, hear me out. I think that sometimes when you're only known for defense and, like, your offense is just, you don't average 10 points per game, I think that hurts you too. I think some people are like, oh, these great defenders like Mikal Bridges, Kawhi over the years, things like that. Well, they also average like 15, 20 points. Like, they also put points up. And so their names are being broadcasted around anyways because they're doing things on both ends. And so the thing I look at, the last 20 games, Herbs was really improving in that area. And so all you are for the first part of the season, even though Herb was still playing good defense, he couldn't hit a three to save his life. And so the narrative around Herb was negative. So if the negative around Herb is negative for the people who watch the Pelicans, imagine the people who don't, right? Like, why would they be then invested as well? That's the only thing I can think of because, again, night in, night out, I watch a lot of basketball. There ain't a lot of Herb Joneses night in, night out, giving fits to whoever your best player is, whether he's a 6'3 guard or whether he's a 6'10 wing in Kevin Durant. There's just not a whole lot of those available around the league. And so I look at those things again. We talk about Herb's improvement down the stretch, averaging 12 points, 53% shooting, 45% from three in the last 20 games. And you look and you say, man, the Pelicans got to pay this man this summer. Again, he's coming up on his extension eligibility. I don't think he's going to be one of those players. Like, again, Herb seems like the type to not spend very much money and not be so predicated around the contract and things like that. More, what's the right fit? What's the right position for him? And so I don't think it's going to be one of those drag out fights or anything like that. But I do want to talk about the subject. I want to talk about what that extension look like because the Pelicans have to be super careful with their funds moving forward because we talk about the CBA. We talk about how it's going to be difficult to stay under the luxury tax right now, much less if the Pelicans start to win anything and trade comes up and BI gets the next max and things like that. So what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think a contract look like? So, like, what do you think the Pelicans go in and say, we would like to get Herb for this on this many years?
Yeah, so this is the result of drafting well, right? You come up into these situations where you have you have these guys who you hit on and you think about, oh man, this is a 10-year starter. Well, these guys need to get paid, right? And so here was the first step to it. So Herb coming out of college as a second round pick. When he first signed his first contract, everybody was like, they gave him the most at that point in time, the highest like undrafted contract of all time, right? And because someone in that Pelicans building saw, what we're seeing now, and they locked him up. So you bring up a point about him not seeming like the guy that cares a lot about money, and I agree with that to an extent because that first contract was a discount. He took the hometown discount, the second rounder discount. And listen, obviously he was the second round and you want to just get the money however you can. But for what he has produced, you've already got that discount already. And so I am interested to see if Herb says, you know what? I need to get a Lou Dort 5 for 83, a Alex Caruso 4 for 30, something like that. I'm interested to see because listen, he may not have made all NBA defensive team, and that's might be something that the Pelicans can say, hey, you didn't make the team because listen, it's a negotiation. Business is business, and so that's something that the Pelicans can say, right? So like that's part of the reason why the Celtics will never admit it. Well, like we're hoping that JB doesn't get that all NBA line because then you could bring that in an extension and say, well, listen, you can't get the 200 and whatever. Here's the 180, and you can save some money on that side. The Pelicans can say that. You never made the All-NBA defensive team, but obviously Herb's rebuttal would be, well, I played, almost every game this season or as many as a lot of the players played on the season. I am the linchpin, right? I am, the Pelicans were a top 6 defense. If anything, that puts even more credit to Herb Jones because he was out there in the starting 5 with a guy like CJ and Jonas who are not known for defense. And he was the catalyst for keeping them afloat. And so I think that Herb is going to get a really decent contract. I think, if you look at some of the other defensive guys or even some of like the backup guards and things like that in the NBA, I think he's gonna base it around some of those higher end contracts. And so again, what we're seeing and what we'll talk about later in the show about keeping the amount of depth you have behind the stars and having that roster be able to to stay afloat. if guys are having bad games or missing. Herb Jones is a staple of that. And so he understands his work. He knows his work. But so I think that, we're going to be looking at a Lou Dort type of contract, or if not, slightly right underneath it.
Right. Like there's just not a whole lot to compare to. There's not a whole lot of second round guys walking around who start every game and who have all defensive caliber. Like there's just not a whole lot of those available. And even when you look at them again, like I was talking about before, it's hard to kind of dictate that because you look at those things, you say, well, Lou Dort averages more points and Alex Caruso averages more points. And like a player like Derek White, who has been pivotal for the Celtics, he got 4 for 70 and he averaged more points. So like, you've got to kind of show it from the offensive, and the offensive guys are the ones that get paid. Like those are the guys that you in the NBA, you pay depending on what contract you're on. You either pay for what you've already done or what you're going to do. And so if you're paying as the Pelicans, you're paying with the mindset that Herb is going to get even better offensively because that's what you need in order to pay someone $20-25 million, whatever it is, in your starting lineup, right? So that'll be interesting. Again, there's a lot of points that work in Herb's favor, like you said, but I could see David Griffin and Trajan and the staff saying, well, hold on, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. This is the landing spot for players that land there. So it'll be an interesting conversation, but I think it gets done this summer. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is the playoffs. Again, it's been a good playoff series. You had a lot of blowouts here and there, but you've also had some really good games and some really good individual performances. But something that I want to call out that I think is encouraging if you're a Pelicans fan or if you're Pelicans on the Pelicans roster or in the organization is that, like, if you look at who's left, right? You got the Celtics, you got the Heat, you got the Lakers, and you got the Nuggets. What can you really draw from all of that? What we talked about last week, all those point guards. And we talked about Steph being the exception to the rule because he's the greatest shooter of all time. Well, he's no longer in the playoffs, and he has lost his first Western Conference series in forever. So now there are no more guards. De'Aaron Fox, gone. Ja Morant, gone. Stephen Curry, gone. All the guards.
Chris Paul,
gone. Like all of the stars who are guards for their teams are no longer there. So what is the NBA telling you? It is a wing-dominated league. You need to, one, have someone who dominates at the rim. So you either have a Anthony Davis, or you have a Nikola Jokic, or you have a Jaylen Brown, or you have a Jimmy Butler. And then two, have somebody that can fill it up from behind the three-point line. So you have a Jason Tatum, you have a Jamal Murray, you have a Miami Heat roster full of name X player who can shoot, or you have a LeBron James who assumes to be a three-point shooter now because that's all he wants to do is shoot. So if you're the Pelicans, you say, well, we got those two things. You got Zion Williamson, who is one of the most efficient players. Again, I'll bet a small sample size. One of the most efficient players in NBA history underneath the goal. And you have Brandon Ingram, who's one of the best mid-range shooter, who, again, has only been excelling in his three-point shooting since joining the Pelicans team. And so you look at those two things, and man, you've got a lot of the work paid out for you already. All these other teams that you look around the league that are trying to get, again, the Grizzlies, for all that Ja could do, Jaren Jackson Jr. was Defensive Player of the Year, but they don't have a second guy. Like that's what ultimately got them knocked out of the playoff. The Warriors, they don't have the size to compete in what NBA is asking for today. So like all of these teams, you're finding out their same thing with the Kings. You're finding out their weaknesses that they don't have those predatory wings or a dominant big. Whereas the Pelicans, you have that. You just can't keep it on the floor, right? Again, you should be very encouraged that you've already done the hard work because that is what's winning. Like everyone wants to play Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, we told you this team wasn't going to make it to the conference finals and this, that, and that. It's hard to win the playoffs. Like it's hard. Like you got to have the right pieces. You got to have the right stars. It's all got to click at the right time. Everybody's got to be healthy. Like it all has to align perfectly for you. And if it doesn't, then you're headed home and everybody's looking at the roster like this person got to go, this person got to go, this person got to go. The other takeaway, Phoenix and Golden State got some decisions to make. So Monty Williams out after taking them to the finals not that long ago. Did you know that the last 4 finals participant coaches are all fired? All the coaches are fired. All of them out of there.
Get them out of there.
Like, that is showing you the window. Again, this is going to be going into year 3 for Willie Green. And again, he hasn't played with all his cards. He hasn't really been given a chance to really win. And so it's hard to judge something like that. But you don't get a long leash. Like, you don't get, look, these guys just went to the finals. You don't get a long
and 3 of them won championships.
Right. And so, like, you look at those things, it's like, man, what are they going to do with DeAndre Ayton? They just paid him a max contract. What are they going to do with Chris Paul? They just paid him a max contract a couple years before. What is Golden State going to do, period, in terms of Draymond and everything with all their failed lottery picks and things like that? What are they going to do, right? So there's a lot of questions being asked for teams that have actually won something, and the Pelicans haven't won anything at all. And so what are your thoughts on how do the Pelicans look at these things and say, we got to make decisions and we got to get better fast? Like, you got to be able, you can't just sit with the last offseason where there were no additions other than drafting Dyson and Zion coming back healthy. You got to be active this summer.
Yeah, man, the NBA is cutthroat, boy. It can change on you quick. So to start with the team building aspect, I think, you know, when you look at the Pelicans roster, in theory, right? If you look at the roster as it is constructed right now, you have a really, really deep team. You have pretty much most of the things that you need. If let's just say everybody's healthy and playing to their positions and playing up to the level that, you know, everybody expects them to play, not even being like incredible, just if they play up to the level that they're playing, you pretty much have everything you need, right? Like you said, you have the predatory ring. You have the shooter who's also growing into a type of predatory ring in and of itself, and Trey Murphy, right? You have the dominant big in Zion. You have the you know, just the isolation god in Brandon Ingram, right? You have a savvy veteran who can fill it up from 3 if he's hot, but also, you know, get buckets in a pinch if you need to in a small spot. So, I mean, like, you have the defender to keep the pressure off of your scoring options in Herb Jones. So you have like everything you would want on the team other than health. And so it goes into what makes it so difficult for the Pelicans is because, like, if you just go down and see the guys that you have on your team, obviously you can make an upgrade probably at center. Could you get somebody to help not having to play Larry Nance every second of every game to keep from, you know, being beat off the dribble and pick and rolls? Obviously, the team is not perfect. The roster is not perfect, but you're seeing what you need in the playoffs. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is not being so reliant on and being so top heavy. We'll talk about that later. But I think it's difficult to watch it right now because it's difficult to watch it and judge because the Pelicans have all of these things that especially in the Western Conference. If you're looking at the last time the Pelicans played the Denver Nuggets, the Pelicans looked like the far superior team, right? Even with Jokic out there, they were beating the number 1 seeded Nuggets handily. And so, you know, it's just weird to kind of have to match that up with what you've seen from the team, which is injuries and, you know, people playing out of positions and out of roles and things like that. But the bones are there, and it's upon the Pelicans to find which bones need to be replaced, which bones need to be, you know, which bones need to be shined up a little more, and who needs to be paid and who needs to, you know, to not get paid as much or to not be paid. And some of those decisions are difficult, right? Because some of the guys in the locker room are loved, and that's another thing that makes this whole situation weird or difficult, is because everybody's in the locker room likes each other. It's not a, you know, you even Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you hear them, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals, but like when they lost a game to Philadelphia in the last round, you heard Jaylen Brown say, I think the offense is better as me with the ball, with me on the ball. Like that, those little comments and things like that steer the direction from where it needs to be. That's not an organization, not a team that might be pulling in the same direction, even though the talent has won over. But you don't have that in the Pelicans, right? Everybody's accountable for everybody. Everybody loves everybody. And so that's what makes it so difficult to get rid of some of these players. And so when you think about the coaching staff, right? Listen, the clock is ticking, right? And it's not a reflection of Willie Green. Again, he has not been given a fair hand, but it's very, 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 very rare that you get Greg Popovich's, that you get Eric Spoelstra's, that you get guys who be there for years and years and have gone through iteration after iteration of the team, right? You got to remember that Eric Spoelstra coached Dwayne Wade and LeBron and Bosh, and now he's coaching Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. Same thing with Pop, right? He won championships with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Now he might be coaching Victor Wembanyama next year's season. So, like, it's very rare that you find guys who stick around for a long time. So what that tells you is that even when coaches win championships, right, every year it's his own year. Nick Nurse has won a championship. Mike Budenholzer won a championship, and they are out of there within 3-4 years. In Budenholzer's case, 2 years. You hear what might happen with Doc Rivers, right? So all of these guys have shown you that this NBA, the NBA coaching seat is a hot one all the time. And so you have to be able to put your best foot forward. And it goes back to some of the things that we saw with Willie Green this season. You have to be willing to not hit your, tie your job and hit your ride to, hey, I'm sticking with my guns and my way or the highway type of things, because if your way doesn't work, it becomes very obvious that you are the issue. And so for Willie Green, again, it's a learning curve. It's not fair that he gets, that he has to play most of his games without, his best players. I hear pundits talking about, oh man, if you take away a team's second best player, what do you expect? And it's like, well, we expect the Pelicans to win the championship, apparently, without their best 2 players. But again, it's a situation where heavy is the crown, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. You're an NBA coach. You have to hold that position. You have to fight off others for that position. You have to fight off complacency. You have to fight off failures, injuries, and those things. And Willie Green has to take another step just the same way as the Pelicans roster has to.
All right. The other thing that really stands out for me is the NBA. I think it's the most wide open it's been maybe ever. Like, going all the way back to like the Lakers and Celtics, crazy. Where literally they just played every year. And then like it seems like this past decade has just been the Warriors versus whatever team LeBron is on. And then the Spurs had their dynasty run, the Heat had their dynasty run. Like this year, you got a 7 seed in the Eastern Conference Finals. Or in the Western Conference Finals. You got an 8 seed in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, and it's not like anyone's like, I can't believe this team made it. It's like, oh, well, that team had weaknesses and we picked the Lakers to go to the – like, it's one of those places that it brings you to the point where the NBA is so competitive that anyone has a chance. And I think that's good for the sport. I think that's good for fans because it's so hard to get up as a fan base thinking, well, we're never going to beat the Warriors, or you're never going to beat the Celtics, or you're never going to beat the Bucks. So, like, why am I even getting that excited? Because I know there's a ceiling to how good we can be. But now you got it where there's so much talent around the league, and you got to have so many things work in your favor in a given season for you to get all the way to the end, that I think it's a good thing for the sport, and it just brings more curiosity, more excitement around the game altogether. The other thing that I think brings a lot of excitement around the NBA is that I think we're going into a new era, bro. I think that this is the beginning of like the continuity era. Okay. We just got past the super team where it's like, this guy is going to play with these 2 guys and that guy is going to ask out next season so he can go play with these 2 guys. And that didn't work. Look at the Suns. The Suns just blew up their roster. They went to the finals 2 years ago, blew up their roster to get Kevin Durant. Chris Paul got hurt, just like Chris Paul has gotten hurt the last 3 years in the playoffs. DeAndre Ayton got hurt, but he didn't seem that interested to be playing anyway. And they're out in the second round. The T-Wolves didn't win anything and were like, yeah, let's go get Gobert. They're out. The Bulls were like, yeah, Nikolai or Vucevic. You got Vucevic. You got You got what's my guy's
Zach
name?
LaVine, DeMar DeRozan,
Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan. That's gonna win a championship. That didn't work.
the
That didn't
Hawks.
work at all. The Hawks going get DeJounte Murray, thinking that's our final piece because
The
we
Cavs.
The Cavs go and get Donovan Mitchell because that's what we need to go with. They're out of there. And the Mavs, again, the Mavs are a little bit reactionary. They messed up the Jalen Brunson situation, who looks like a bona fide all-NBA player for the next 5-10 years. He was incredible. Even though they got knocked out by the Heat, it wasn't his fault. They let him walk for free. So they were like, let's go trade all of our side pieces to go get Kyrie, who's probably going to walk this summer anyway. So look at all those teams that said, let's go get it. Let's go build. None of that worked out. But then you look at the teams that's left. The Nuggets, again, everybody's been clowning on the Nuggets the past couple of years because they've been these regular season heroes. But in reality, they've never made it to the playoffs with their players being available. Either Michael Porter Jr. has been out, or Jamal Murray has been out, or both have been out. And there's been Jokic, go figure it out. Go win it by yourself. And it hasn't worked out. Well, the first year they did, they're in the Western Conference Finals. The Celtics, they basically been the same team, just tweaking around the edges, adding veterans here, adding trading for this veteran there, adding pieces, and they've got the deepest team in the NBA. So they basically been the same team, the same group of 6 guys for the past 4 or 5 years. Then you look at the Lakers, they have LeBron. Boom, cancel card. AD has been healthy. AD has been healthy, so look at where they're at. And then the Heat have basically been the same team since the bubble, a couple years before the bubble. So you look at those things, you're like, if you look back decades in the past eras, it's been mostly teams that stay together, grow together, tweak around the edges. It's just lately it's been this super team, let's go figure it out with 3 guys and a bunch of trash on the roster after that. I think we'll revert back the other way, man. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're in the death of the super team. Dorian Finney-Smith last season said it. He said that, the super team-ish not going to work anymore. And you see it right now, right? You see Devin Booker and Kevin Durant had to score like 80 points between the two of them in order for the Suns to have any kind of chance against a Denver team who, if you have Jokic, he's incredible. But like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are probably either 1A and 1B and then 2 or 2 and 3, or they are definitely 2 of the 3 best players in that entire series, and they got washed. You have to have depth. Depth is the name of this era, because you have to be able to withstand Jason Tatum going 1 for 13 in a playoffs game until he gets up and going in the fourth quarter. You see, look at the Lakers. As much as you don't like to talk about the Lakers and give them their credit, we've seen a Rui Hachimura game this postseason. We've seen Austin Rivers games this postseason. We've seen big shots from
Austin Reeves.
Russell.
I'm sorry. We'll give Austin Reeves. Austin Rivers.
I'm sorry.
No.
Not Austin Rivers. Not Austin Rivers. Austin Reeves. I'm sorry about that. Tony Parker, my Peter Parker. You've seen a Rui Hachimura game. You've seen the Austin Reeves game. You've seen a D'Lo hit big shots in big quarters. You see Dennis Schroeder hit game. Like it's in the playoffs. It's about you know what the stars are going to give you, right? Look at what happened to Philly. Joel Embiid and James Harden were either incredible or they were terrible. And when they were terrible, they lost by 30 or 40 because no one else on the team could do anything else, because you had spent all your money on those two and Tobias Harris, who was basically an empty salary max contract. And so I think when you base this back to the Pelicans and you look at a team, the Warriors, right? Even when they had their super team, they had Kevin Durant added on there. Kevin Durant left. They won last season. How did they win last season? With the same group of guys that had been there. Steph, Draymond, Clay, Iguodala, these guys who had been together, who had been through battles together, who had forged, unspeakable communication, right? You didn't even need to talk. Draymond is passing the ball. Look at the Nuggets, right? Jokic can hit Jamal Murray and lead him to a spot without even saying anything because they've played so many games together and things like that. So again, you go back and look at the Pelicans, and it's like you just got to get these guys on the floor to get some games with them in order to build that communication and that camaraderie and that on-court chemistry. because that's what seems like it's going to take you now into the next step. When you think about the Pelicans, even their CJ McCollum trade, they didn't blow up the team in order to get CJ McCollum. Yeah, they let go a really, really quality role player in Josh Hart, but they didn't blow up and give all their picks away and take away from the young core and BI and Herb and Trey and those guys. And so, for when the Pelicans were in the running for, do you make the trade for Kevin Durant? Do you kick around the tires on Dame Lillard and all of these trade talks that are coming up? When you look at, what the Suns did, giving away Mikal Bridges and giving up all of their depth in order to do this, it shows that, you don't have to be, you don't have to be top heavy anymore. That's not what the NBA is showing you right now. The Celtics are the best team in the NBA, not, obviously because of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown playing at an incredible level, but it's the other guys, right? If you get past them, you got to deal with Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White and Robert Williams and Al Horford. Like, look at the names that's on it. We're talking 6 man of the year type guys and defensive player of the year type guys and rookie of the year in Malcolm Brogdon's case. And there's just a lot of all defensive NBA guys and Derek White. You just have a lot of guys who can do things that are not just scoring, right? You have depth. And so when you look at the Pelicans, that's what they have on the roster. They have Trey and Herb and Jose and Najee. And you had Jackson and you had Dyson this past season. And you had Kyra this past season. And you had all of these different guys that could contribute different things in order to play. And then you still have flexibility moving forward as far as having a bunch of draft picks and having contracts that if you want to get better, you can trade, but keep the nucleus together. And I think that is the direction that the Pelicans and the NBA are moving towards. This is what the Adam Silver wanted. This is what the CBA is trying to enforce. The CBA is trying to enforce parity across the NBA. This is what is good for the league. It's good for the sport. It's good for the bottom dollar of the NBA, because if I'm a fan in Houston and I may be able to get James Harden because Philly can't keep the team together, then that's a city that hasn't done anything for a while, but now they're going to be revitalized, right? You think about some of the other guys who are on these teams that the NBA these teams are going to have to make decisions on. They're going to go to other cities and other teams, or other teams are going to be able to at least offer contracts to those guys that they may not have had the opportunity to do so. And so you're looking at the parity across the NBA, and this is what the CBA, this is what the Adam Silver and the governors and all of those people, this is what they wanted. And now you're seeing the slight change and the slight movement towards it. And I think it's good, because having an 8 seed and a 7 seed, no one thought, you would ever see 8 seeds and 7 seeds in conference finals and possibly in the NBA, after seeing so many super teams, get together. But yeah, here we are.
Right. I link back to, the KD trade in the offseason. Although I never thought it was even close for the Pelicans, I just couldn't see them trading the guy that just brought them to the playoffs by himself with a flawed roster last year. It never made sense. Like, BI would have had to go in order to get KD, especially KD toward the end of his career, not the beginning. That never made sense. And then the mid-season, let's trade Trey and Herb and Jose and whatever for X player, whoever was around the trade block, it was the name, whether it was OG Anunoby, whether it was Mikal Bridges, whatever. Go trade all your depth away for one player. It never made sense to me, because you need those guys on the team with whatever you got left in order to win. Like, you can't just have, especially on a team where your 2 stars miss a lot of time, you can't just have 1, 2, 3 guys that can get you 20 and everybody else are just out there.
Ask CJ how it feels to just be out there when you have your top heavy and those 2 guys are out. Ask CJ how it feels.
Right. And so, like, it never made sense in that aspect. And again, the NBA, to your point, you're absolutely right. The NBA wants this. And I think it's good for the fans. We just talked about it. Like, if you think that your team has a chance, you are much more likely to be invested all the way to the end. That's why they invented the play-in situation. So you could be invested all the way into the end. With all the talent around the league and them changing the rule for the CBA, making it difficult to keep 3 supermax players on the same team because they want that talent spread out amongst the other teams. Everyone's going to be more invested if you think your team has a chance. What did we talk about all season long? This season had the chance to be one of the best seasons in a long time in the NBA because there were so many good teams and everyone has a flaw here or there, this and that and the other. How is it going to shake out? Because everyone has a chance, and that's exactly how it played out. And I don't think it's going to get any better from the standpoint of these are the 2 teams that you got to go through for the next 10 years. I think it's going to be a mix and a match every single year. Who can stay healthy, who has the right pieces, who's willing to keep their group together for a longer amount of time. And again, with the CBA rules and things like that, it's going to be difficult to be adding all of these players like it has been over the last 10, 20 years to these already really good teams like the Celtics. Like, they're not going to be able to get a Malcolm Brogdon off a trade. Like, they're not going to be able to just add these really good players to a 6-man, to a 7-man, to an 8th-man. Like, that's not going to be the case anymore. Those guys are going to be playing bigger roles at smaller teams and things like that. And I just think that is a great thing for the NBA. That's a great thing for the Pelicans, who they dove into the continuity piece last year, maybe a little bit to a fault, definitely a little bit to a fault. But now that's the way the league is going to be. Again, I expect rosters to look relatively similar, and I think that's good for rivalries. I think that's good for divisions. Like, when the same players on the team for more than 1 year at a time, I think that's a good thing as well. So we talk about how teams are going to have to be constructed moving forward in terms of building their teams organically, and if they want to have 3 superstars, drafting those superstars to their team. The NBA draft lottery happens tomorrow. Mm-hmm. The NBA Combine started today. There's a couple things. Like, first of all, do you think the Pelicans keep the pick?
That's a conversation that needs to be had. That's a conversation that needs to be had. I told you how I felt. I think if you go to Willie Green and you say, hey, listen, if I draft this guy, will you give him minutes? If it's a shooter and we draft him, he has to get on the floor. He has to get some minutes, some kind of way. I can't take any more, Dyson Daniels, DMP CDs for 3-4 weeks at a time while you're watching, other rookies kind of contribute to winning. And so I do think they keep it. I think they keep it because I think, whether it's, a guy that they can trade him for and flip the pick for, or, if it's a guy that they like on the draft, I think you have to think about, if you're going to trade this pick, what's it going to look like on the books? We just talked about the books. What is it going to look like for this book? You can't really take any more salary in, so somebody else is going to have to be attached to that pick. I mean, we just talked about continuity. So if they don't, I think it's going to be one of those Jonas Valanciunas, contracts is out there for a pick. But I do think I think if you held a Nerf gun to my head, I say they kept the pick.
I agree. I think that the Pelicans see that, like, it's going to be hard to attract talent here in free agency, 1. 2, we just talked about it. In order for you to trade something and not get something back, like, teams are not going to be looking for that this summer. Like, if you're trading me salary, you got to take some back. So adding a 14th pick or 15th pick or 13th pick, whatever it is, to a JV contract doesn't make it that much more attractive to the other team, because they're like, that's not enough, right? Like, I still need you to eat some salary back. So I don't know if that necessarily increases your trade tip. And so in that standpoint, the Pelicans have been good with drafting in the first round, the second round, undrafted, things like that. So why would you deviate away from that? To your point, like, I think there's going to have to be some flexibility talked about, because if you go get an athletic center, for example, so centers historically, I mean, look at Jackson Hayes. He's a prime example. Centers take a while. They take a while to get there. Like, it's just a longer position to develop, because you got to know so much. You're the you're the anchor of the defense, but also you have to do so many things well offensively, like set screens without getting offensive fouls consistently. And you've got to be able to do things and think the game a certain way from a center position that it takes a while for centers to really get good. Like Bam Adebayo wasn't Bam Adebayo out the gates. Like it takes a while for those guys to really grow into their own. If you do that, it's Willie Green willing to start that player if you have to. Like, if he's the best player and he's the best talent, he may make mistakes and things like that. But if your coach is not going to start him, you might as well not draft him, right? Like that's a conversation to be had. You talk about the shooter. I personally would rather go bargain shopping if I'm the Pelicans and go find, there's a ton of veteran shooters that shoot 38, 39, 40% that you don't have to pay a whole lot of money to, that you can find that can stay at the edge of the bench and be available for when you need that type of scorer, when you need that type of player on the court. I would rather you find that. And because every player in AAU and in college basketball, the first thing they're taught how is how to shoot now. Like that's what Steph has done for the game. Everybody thinks the jumper is the thing that you have to have and things like that. So I think that is more prevalent. That is more available than a rim running 7-footer who can protect the paint and also get rebounds. I think those are harder to find, and who could also switch on guards, because for as good as Joel Embiid is, Jason Tatum showed you, like, if you don't have a center who can switch, all teams with predatory wings are going to do is find that center and isolate him and make him defend in space. And no matter how good you are, you're the MVP. You're not set up to win when you're playing against a guard who is much quicker and much faster than you as well. So I just don't see it there. Here's a question. Do you think the Pelicans would be open to drafting a scorer? Someone who is already capable of getting their own shot and able to do a little more, maybe with the defensive upside, because the Willie Green is not drafting anyone who has zero defense. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they would dabble with a player like that?
So I feel that the way you feel about shooters, I feel that way about a scorer, right? Okay. I think that there are a lot of people in the NBA that could get a bucket like that. There's a lot of TJ Warren was scoring 40 points a game in the bubble 2-3 years ago. There are guys in the league who could get buckets at any point in time. Like the last game of the season, Victor Oladipo scored like 40 points in the game. There's a lot of people. I think, if Brooklyn, one of the guys that I'm looking at is like, if Brooklyn really doesn't want to play Cam Thomas, like he's a guy that you could probably go get for cheap, and he could just get buckets, right? You could go get a scorer. But I think I lean more to what you were saying about the big man, right? If there's an athletic big man in the draft that can defend, that can, shot block, and that can switch on guards, we're seeing that is a recipe for success right now, right? You're looking at Robert Williams and AD and Bam Adebayo, guys like that who can get out, and even a guy like Aaron Gordon, right? Just a guy that can be athletic and meet you at the rim, and protect the rim and just switch on onto guards, and be able to hold their own. That is what you need right now in the NBA. And so I lean more towards that, trying to find that guy in the draft. But if the scoring route, right, we looked at Benedict Mathurin last season, that he was one of the guys that we both wanted to get, and look at what he's done, right? Get out there and score buckets, put buckets in the air. I think that that's basically drafting another CJ, right? You let CJ sit down and plug in another version of CJ who could go get a bucket. I think that is something that the Pelicans could use, right? Another shot creator and a guy who could go get his own bucket. But I do think that defensive big, man, that is the one glaring address for the Pelicans. It was there last season. It was there at the trade deadline. And guess what? It is still there now. And it's now even worse because you're seeing Larry Nance get even, breaking down and starting to show, the wear and tear of all his injuries throughout the years. You're going to have that. You cannot rely on him another season to be the only athletic big on the roster that's getting playing time.
Right. And again, you've got EJ Liddell and you've got players that are coming back. Again, if it was me, I would extend Jackson a contract and draft somebody, right? Like you need multiple athletic bigs. Like again, for as great as JV is and as great as Billy is, that's just not the center in today's game that wins. Like, look at the centers that are still playing right now. Like, Jokic is an MVP, multiple two-time MVP.
Anthony Davis also can get you. He also can get you a 50-point triple-double. So let's just put him to the side.
Right. You got Anthony Davis, and then you got, to your point, you got Bam, and you got Time Lord on it. Like, you got guys who can move, guys who can do things for you. It's not the back to the basket era anymore. So you've got to get more athletic that position. And if you look at the Pelicans draft history, they've been drafted a lot of athletes. Dyson, Trey, Jackson, Kyra, obviously Zion, stuff like Jose going undrafted. Like, that is what the Pelicans look for. They look for athleticism. You got to do it at the 5 position now. So again, tomorrow should be exciting. Maybe there's some fireworks. We might see another swing cash kind of pout face if the Pelicans don't move up or anything like that. But it starts the beginning of draft season, looking at these prospects. So we'll be coming to you, breaking down just like we had before, different prospects and different positions that the Pelicans, if you look at that look like Pelican players. Again, you kind of have a sense for what this organization look for at players after a couple of years of drafting and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see it play out. With that being said, that's all we have for you this week, but we got a lot coming up for you in the upcoming weeks. What you got left for the people, Garrett?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, the draft lottery is tomorrow. Fingers crossed for Wemby. Probably not, but you can hope. One can hope. I think the Pelicans are slided to probably fall 13, 14 around that area. We'll see. Stranger things have happened. So we'll see. We'll be here to cover it all next week, and we'll see what's going on with the Pels at that point. So follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow us on Twitter at NO Basketball without the E. Instagram NO Basketball without the E. And most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Network. We'll see you guys next week.